Hello Terraria enthusiasts. Today I am going to show you how to port a mod that you've developed from tModLoader 1.4.3 to 1.4.4 because honestly, after checking YouTube for tutorials on any of this, I've found a whole lot of nothing, so I'm going to change that. Okay, this isn't going to be too complicated. I'm just going to create a test mod so that I can show you the basic steps of porting items from 1.4.3 to 1.4.4. Alright, now that we have our mod created, let's press build, and that should make everything viewable from Visual Studio. I'm going to work under the assumption that you already have that set up, you already have a mod, and that you already have a need to port it to 1.4.4. Fortunately, there is some good documentation on how to do this, but I just feel that it's better for everyone if you have a visual example of how to port a mod, because it can be difficult to learn how to do this just by reading a document. So anyway, let's open the .cs proj in Visual Studio. Now, as you can see, in items, we have a basic sword setup. The display name is automatically going to be basic sword. We don't have to worry too much about that. The tooltip shows up just like normal. Both of these change in 1.4.4, and in fact, a lot of naming and stuff changes, and I feel it's going to be a lot easier if I show you. So, let's jump right over to tModLoader 1.4.4. Now, I realize I didn't explain much of the process of switching versions of tModLoader. Basically, you go to the game in your Steam library, you go to the options, there should be a betas tab, and you switch that to whichever version of tModLoader you want to play. I might go deeper into that if enough people ask me, but for now, I'm just going to assume that you know how to do all of this. We're just here to port a mod to 1.4.4. So we're going to go to Develop Mods and find our test mod that we've created in 1.4.3. We're going to try to build it, and as you can see, even with our one item, the basic sword, it already has an error. And this is really why I made this tutorial, is because it can be quite bothersome to go through this yourself. Let's jump back into the code and see what the problem was. You'll see that tooltip set default is now a non-usable method. The reason for this is they have completely reworked how the naming scheme works, and in fact, they've completely changed localization in general. So all of the language that your mod uses is now stored in localization files instead of static defaults of any item you create. TLDR, the display name and tooltip are set somewhere else, and we don't need this code anymore. It would be nice to keep the comments to remember what you've named something or what the tooltip for something is, but with a basic sword, I just feel like it's not very necessary because it's, you know, it's a basic sword. I mean, it doesn't have anything special for a tooltip. Anyway, this is going to be the main thing that we do to port our mod to 1.4.4. You want to come over to this exclamation mark here. tMod Porter will automatically set everything up for the new update. So let's click this. So after some console nonsense shows up, you will see that the mod has been successfully ported to 1.4.4, but it didn't change anything. What did it do? Well, we'll go back and build and reload and see what the problem is. You will see that this basic sword is named correctly, but where did the tooltip go? I'll tell you where the tooltip went. You will see, if we go to mod sources again, test mod requires a rebuild. Now why would that be? Let's go back to the code once again. You will see that there is a new folder called Localization, and this contains or would contain every item your mod has. It automatically takes the namespaces of all of your classes and puts them in here to give values for display names and tooltips, etc. This works for buffs, this works for NPCs, this works for items. It does a lot of things by itself. But something it does not do is keep names and tooltips across tModPorter. So, we want a basic sword, and the tooltip for it was, this is a modded sword, or something along that line. But replacing the tooltip is as simple as this. The quotation marks are not necessary. They were just there on the tooltip to show that there was no tooltip. In other words, that was how they mark it as string.empty, is just by having two quotation marks here with nothing in between. Now, if you want to have a multi-line tooltip, you can set it up like this. You put 3 apostrophes in a row on both sides to act as brackets. And you can put anything in between with however many lines you want. And the basic idea is it will take all of this and put it into the tooltip exactly like you write it. You can even put in color codes like this that you would normally do with a string, and it will still work within the tooltip written in this hjson. The naming scheme for this hjson is kind of complicated and it's difficult to get used to, but it's really very simple how it works. It takes the namespace of testmod, which we have here. It doesn't need to write anything else past that because testmod is in the name of the file. And inside of it, we can see items. Items is because of the folder we have called items. And within the items folder is a basic sword item. And that is where this basic sword comes from. These brackets signify everything that is within this item. So we can see basic sword has 2 values, display name and tooltip, and that's what we just modified. This is how you change the name and the tooltip of your items for tModLoader 1.4.4. Now let's go back to tModLoader, rebuild our mod here, and go back into the game to see if our changes worked. And as you can see, basic sword now has a multi-line tooltip, and it even has the dark gray color that I added, which is kind of ironic that I wrote colors there because, you know, that's pretty dark for a color. But anyway, that is the basic idea of how you write localization for items. It can be tedious to switch between the hjson and the CS files for coding and localization, but this is the new system. I personally think it's a much more organized way to put descriptions and names for all of your stuff, and it also has other uses regarding other languages because those are super easy to set up now. You can put display names and tooltips in other languages without worrying too much about copying down everything you already have. If I'm not mistaken, that is all you really have to do in order to port your mod to 1.4.4. You just run tModPorter, change the display names and tooltips to be in the localization files instead of the item code itself, and that should be good. Any other errors are just changes to methods that have been made. Those should be pretty easy to fix if you have IntelliSense active. If you have any questions, be sure to comment them. I'll be checking those later. And yeah, have a good day.